Julie's asked me to talk about a couple of things this afternoon. First of all, to talk a bit about the mobile money market, what it's all about, because it is an absolutely fascinating area. And secondly, to talk about Monetize and what our role is in mobile money. And she's already talked about some aspects of that. So the first thing to say is that there are really two big stories going on around mobile money, one in the developed world and one in emerging markets. So I want to cover both of those briefly. In the developed world, so places like here, the States, the rest of Europe, parts of Asia, etc., we all have lots of choice about the way that we manage our banking. And really, the role of the mobile is going to be driven by its supreme convenience. It's just easier to check your balance, to make a payment, to buy things using your mobile phone. And that's really going to be the big driver in a market like this where we've got lots of choice about using the internet, telephone banking or branches. And from a bank's point of view, one of the great consequences of this is the opportunity to reduce cost to serve. Banks have massive call centres full of people ringing up just to check their balance, just to find out what the last few transactions were that have gone through their account. Now, here's an example of what I think is probably the simplest way you can check your bank balance. This is a BlackBerry Bold, for those who recognise that. And here I am typing a text message, sending it to my bank, just saying bow. And you can watch the data coming in. There we go, on about the count of 3. And there's my bank balance. Now, if I know how to text, and let's face it, that's not too high a hurdle, is it? Lots of people know how to text. Why am I ever going to call my bank again to check my balance? Why am I going to endure the indignity of IVR to find out my balance if I can do that? Now, typically, handling a balance inquiry for a bank in a call centre costs about $5. Yeah, we charge them way less than that for a year's text banking. So there's an early benefit for banks here in reducing cost to serve. Our consumer research says that people who use mobile banking, guess what? They don't call the call centres so often. They don't go into branches so often for those simple transactions. But of course, it's not just about that. As we move on to smartphones, then for all the people who are getting smartphones, there are other things you can do. You can make it a lot more secure. You can make it interactive. I used to run internet and telephone banking at NatWest RBS, and we used to talk about those as being remote banking. Part of the reason that people liked it, that their satisfaction was high with that, was because they felt it distanced them from the bank. They didn't have to actually deal with the bank. The opportunity with mobile is to create a whole new generation of interactive propositions. So if your bank sends you a message to say, you're just about to go overdrawn, click here to transfer some money from your savings account to cover that. Or your pay's just come in, you had £300 left in your account, click here to sweep it to your savings account. Your gas bill's come, it's 85 quid, do you want to just click and pay it? The exchange rate's moved to this, do you want to buy that currency now? I mean, that would be useful. That would be really something useful coming from your bank. So there's going to be a whole new generation of interactive propositions that are going to be generated out of this mobile channel. And also, of course, there are technology advances here. So in the not very distant future, we'll be able to use these phones to put our credit cards and our debit cards and our Oyster cards into the back of them and just tap to pay. Now that's going to be something that will be built in and will really revolutionize, I think, the use of cash because it's become so convenient to do it from something that you have in your hand. Now, for most of the market, for the mass market, not for early adopters like all the guys and girls here, it's not about jumping straight to advanced things. It's about building trust in a new channel, starting off by just managing your accounts. And then, once you've got the trust, making some simple payments, and then moving on to actually buying things with your phone. But let me just illustrate some of the services and the way they might look with smartphone technology. So here I am logging into my mobile banking service. I can easily make use of the great UI on a smartphone to check my balance, to flick through the different cards in my mobile wallet, maybe to reload a kid's pocket money card or something like that. Receiving transaction alerts not via an intrusive SMS message, but as an in-app notification. And then, of course, making payments. If I want to make payments, find out where the nearest branch is, where the nearest free ATM is. Maybe getting an offer because I'm a premium customer, so I get special offers. And converting those into barcodes that I can use immediately to fulfill. I'm sorry about the Britney Spears reference. This was produced by someone else. And this idea of configuring my alerts. Don't send me an alert for every transaction I make, but I would like to get an alert for transactions above £100, or if they're from overseas. Or even on here, you saw blocking a card. So this idea that, why do we carry around our plastic cards in a fail dangerous way? Why can't I just control it and turn it temporarily on or off, actually from my handset? I think this idea of configuring your preferences from an application will be something we'll see a lot with mobile. Nobody wants to walk into Blue Water or somewhere and have their phone jumping out of their hand with all the offers being randomly spammed at them. What you want to be able to do is set your own preferences to pull the information that you want. I think that's something we'll see. So that's a glimpse of some of the things that will go on, I think, in the developed world. And what's also going on in the background is something about identity management. Yeah, this is a very secure device. So that means that, yeah, it's going to be a place that you manage your money, but also I think it's going to be the key to this sort of federated identity and authentication that we're going to see in future as well. So lots of interesting things going on in the developed world. Now, in the emerging markets, it's a different story. It's driven by reach. As the video said, there are far more mobile phones than there are bank accounts in the world. 5.3 billion mobile phones, 2.2 billion bank accounts, approximately. And what's happening in the emerging markets in Africa, in Latin America, in parts of Asia is the following. The classic scenario is I live in a rural village in Uganda, and I go up to work in Kampala. I get paid in cash, and today what I have to do to get that money home to my family is I have to get on a bus and travel for a couple of days or something to bring the cash back to my mum. Or maybe I entrust the bus driver to take at least most of it back to her for me. What's changed is that all the people with mobile phones in emerging markets, of course, the vast majority are on prepay mobile phones, so they have to buy airtime, and they buy scratch cards at agents like this that are everywhere. They're in my mum's village and they're in Kampala. So what's happening is that people are using the mobile phones. They go into, I get paid in cash, I go into my local agent. He has an application like this on his mobile phone, and he adds $10 to the electronic value on my phone. I can then send that money, in effect by SMS. It's not really SMS, but a bit like SMS. I can send that money to my mum, and she can go to the local agent in her village and take the cash out. Or in fact, ideally, leave the cash in electronic form and pay shopkeepers with that, pay her bills with that, so that you start getting some circulation of electronic value. And the adoption rates of this, when you get all the ingredients right, are massively faster than doing fancy smartphone apps in the UK, where we've got all that choice, because it's solving a real social need. It's the first access to secure financial management that a lot of people are getting. And for this reason, these social and economic benefits, people like the Gates Foundation have put in, I think that this figure's right, $500 million into a fund to help support these sorts of mobile money ventures in emerging markets because of those wider benefits. And of course, it's all capitalizing on these agent networks that the mobile operators have got, so they're the early movers in this space. There's another slightly more subtle significance of smartphones, of internet-enabled phones in these countries. So at the moment, if you're one of these many people in somewhere like Uganda who has a mobile phone but doesn't have a bank account, you can't interact with e-commerce. And you're not going to get to e-commerce through PCs. It's going to come through the mobile phone. And so actually, the penetration of internet-enabled phones is moving faster than you might normally expect in these countries because of all the vested interests in enabling those people to get access to e-commerce. Now, e-commerce for them probably won't mean buying the same sort of silly things that I buy off Amazon or something. It will mean something like, if I've got a sack of potatoes that I've grown, instead of my market for that being the people that I can get to within a few hours' walk from where I live, I can tap in and find out who's got the best price in the area. through e-commerce. And so it'll be new propositions that are delivered via e-commerce, but the mobile phone will be the point of access for that. So some really exciting things going on both in the developed world and emerging markets in this space. And in terms of where this evolution's at, we're sort of at the end of the pioneer phase. There's been an awful lot of trials and pilots that have gone on around the world, which have really tested whether or not the technology works, tested whether or not people really like using this stuff. There's a mobile money city in Spain, Sitges, I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation. Nice is the sort of showcase in France, and Swindon is usually, for some reason, chosen as the basis for trials in the UK in the electronic world. So there have been all these pioneering experiments that have gone on, but often they've had the shortcomings that they're closed loop, they're not built for scalability, and they've run into trouble. They've run into trouble from the regulators. So the most successful example of those unbanked mobile wallets is in Kenya, being run by Safaricom there, a Vodafone subsidiary. And the regulator there suddenly realized, hang on a minute, a huge proportion of GDP is being held in what seems to be an unregulated airtime billing engine run by a mobile network. Now, as it happens, there was actually a secure bank account in the background there. But the regulators have started to clamp down on this. In India, the regulators have said all the mobile money initiatives must be driven out of the banking system. So that's sort of caused a little bit of a pause. The problems of interoperability. There was one trial in Hong Kong where I could only pay you if you were with the same bank and on the same mobile network as me. That's not going to work. That's not going to extend very far. You can't have closed-loop systems if you want to see this stuff flourish. The problems of security. So it's been fascinating, those of you who watch this sort of space. So Jack Dorsey and his Square, his lovely little invention that you plug into an iPhone that reads a credit card. As soon as it started getting any mileage, Verifone comes slamming in on top of it, saying, just a minute, it doesn't have the necessary security standards in there. There was a mobile phone parking service in London that at one point in its registration process got you to put your card number, CVV, and expiry date into a free format SMS and send it. I mean, if we brought that into HSBC or RBS, I mean, you'd get nowhere. So there are security issues here. It's not a crazy frog ringtone. This is money. This is identity. So for all these reasons, there's been a bit of a pause in mobile money. And what we're beginning to see is a much more strategic phase here. So the big players are getting involved in our rather obscure mobile money space. The big names now aren't funny little technology companies that it used to be a few years ago. It's Google and Apple who are making all the noise about this stuff. It's becoming based around payment infrastructures. Think back to the evolution of ATMs. When ATMs were launched in the UK, as a NatWest customer, I could only use NatWest ATMs. Then the formation of Link happened, which meant that all banks' customers could use all the other ATMs. And it was only that infrastructure, that collaborative infrastructure, that then didn't take away competition, but it let it be a much more efficient system over which competition could then run. So we shouldn't be trying to create new payment infrastructures. We should be lubricating the existing infrastructures and just creating a secure mobile layer on top of it. And that's exactly what we're involved in doing. And this phase is going to have to be technology agnostic. It's no good if it only works on one type of handset or for one mobile network. It's going to involve banks and mobile operators collaborating in some way, and that can be quite a challenge. It's going to have to be interoperable globally, isn't it? The French tap-and-go to pay experiment is working to a standard that doesn't work anywhere else in the world. One might say that's... No, I won't say it. But it's going to be a problem, isn't it, in terms of wider rollout. And also, it's going to have to be future-proof. So these new tap-and-go handsets aren't in the mass market yet. But actually, the approach to this needs to be ready to build them in when they are generally available to the mass market. So if you're in a bank, and I'm fascinated by retail banking, and I get the chance to talk to banks all over the world about how they see this evolving over time. And this is sort of the consensus, and don't worry, I'm not going to go through everything on this slide. There's a sort of basics thing about let people check their balance by text, send them an alert if their balance is getting low, or if a strange-looking transaction goes through their account. And, of course, you should make sure that internet banking looks good on a smartphone, like on an iPhone. You look daft as a bank if your internet banking doesn't render well. And increasingly now, you also need to have a smartphone app. So if you're a big consumer brand, you've got to have an app in not just the Apple Store, but in Android, increasingly in BlackBerry, and there are other ones coming along. That's just the first generation. But before we get too excited, no bank in the UK has even got all that in place yet. Yeah, this is just a very early stage of its evolution, so we're trying to grapple with the practicalities of getting services started, but also extending into the future. The second phase has sort of got two things going on here. First of all, there's a lot more types of payments, so an account-to-account payment, so I can pay you like sending a check, or a peer-to-peer payment, where actually I identify you with your mobile phone number, which is in my contacts list. The odds are, because if I'm paying my friends, my family, my work colleagues, the window cleaner, the plumber, these are all people the au pair, these are all people that I've probably got in my mobile phone contacts list, so just paying from that is one of the things that will come along. And of course in the UK, the cheque replacement initiative, being led by the Payments Council, is looking to mobile for a lot of this sort of stuff to happen. But the second thing that comes along here is a move from talking about technology to talking about more customer-centric propositions. You may have picked up, the keen student may have picked up on that video, that people are using smartphone apps 16 times a month for banking. Internet bankers only use internet banking about 7 times a month. So this is the channel of highest interaction that a bank has with its customers. So where are you going to put your CRM prompts? Where are you going to put your sales and service prompts? Where are you going to put the premium services for premium customers, etc.? You're going to put them into these personalized, segmented applications. And then there's a third phase, which is all about extending the boundaries. We've just launched with one bank in India, and we're doing buying cinema tickets, choosing the seat within your mobile banking application. Okay? We're going to be seeing, this is when social network integration will start coming along, location-based services, buying tickets, topping up your Oyster card. Each new technology enables brands to extend their boundaries in new ways. And I think mobile is going to be such a profound technology in money that banks, for example, will look to extend their boundaries in some of these ways. Now, it's interesting looking at this, that this axis here is like text-based services. And I think text has a really important continuing role in mobile money. Because it's the best way of alerting somebody. It's the best push mechanism. This row along here is sort of the mobile web. And once you've re-rendered internet banking, it's not really probably the best channel for doing things. A lot of this innovation is going to be driven by smartphone applications. I was on a panel recently with Google and Facebook, and they said, as if everybody knew, but I hadn't thought about it like this, that mobile web is great for account acquisition and for transactional commerce. But for customer engagement, for CRM, it's all about apps. i.e., once you know a customer, give them an app so that you can give them the much superior experience within those smartphone apps. So a lot of this innovation is going to be driven in apps. And in different parts of the world, it'll be, things will happen in a different order, but that's broadly the direction that it's moving in. And what this says is, of course, if you're a bank, is as well as getting these basic services out, you want to make sure that you've got a line of sight to this stuff, because nobody wants to be the senior manager in the bank who put in the platform that doesn't do all this stuff when it comes along. Yeah? It's really important to have a focus on the pragmatic services for now, but a clear line of sight to the future. And one of the reasons that our business exists is because to do that, you don't just want to buy lots and lots of little bits of software if you're a bank. You actually want a platform approach, an enabling platform that lets you connect off to all these people in the mobile money ecosystem. And the way we do that is, so if you're a bank, imagine, if you will, that you're all retail bankers. How's that for a treat on a Friday afternoon? So if you're a retail banker, you've got your core banking system, your CRM system, and the way Monetize operates is we connect to those using standard interfaces. Yeah, if you've got lovely core systems, we plug into your middleware. If not, we go in via your ATM switch if you've got a bit of a graunchy old infrastructure. Our platform then sorts out the presentation of mobile money services across all the different types of handsets. So whether it's text services, whether it's smartphone apps, whether it's tablets, we sort out all that sort of stuff. And we handle the complexity of dealing with the mobile networks and the app stores, etc. So the NatWest iPhone app, which is probably our most famous service, if NatWest decided they wanted us to add an Android app, they wouldn't have to do any internal IT work. And of course, that's really important in banks at the moment. They've got plenty of things to do without having to take on new technology challenges. But the other thing we do is we form the network connections that are needed to enable those other services within mobile banking. So with our service, the one I use from First Direct, I can top up my kids' mobile phone credit from it, which is a nice little thing to be able to do. Now, the bank doesn't have those connections, but we've connected off to Mobile Phone Top Up UK to enable it. If the banks wanted to enable topping up your Oyster card, we can do it like that. If, for example, we were to connect to Western Union, we could enable all our 250 banks around the world to enable payment out through Western Union's distribution network in all different countries without them having to make the connection themselves. And this is why I talk about lubricating existing infrastructures, bringing them together and just really providing a secure messaging switch in the middle. So you've got people who've got a customer base and you've got people who've got great services, great distribution, and it's about connecting them together. It's all about network value from that point of view. So really Monetize's value to people is we have a technical platform that sorts out all the different handsets, and we form those network connections. And just in one page to describe Monetize, so I mentioned we support about 250 banks around the world at the moment, have about 3.5 million, a few more actually, users on our platform, about 300 staff. And we cover mobile banking, mobile payments, and mobile shopping, because I think it's really important that all this stuff is connected together. Once I've got my money on my phone, I shouldn't have to keep re-registering everywhere. If I have to keep re-registering with every different retailer, every sort of payment I want to make, it'll just never get going. If it's going to flourish, there's got to be that enabling infrastructure. We're active in the UK. We're live in the States with a joint venture with FIS. We have a joint venture with Visa in India, and we're launching this year there. And we've recently announced our first partnerships in Hong Kong and China and Indonesia. And we've also just launched, the picture you saw earlier was from Nigeria, where we've just launched our first mobile wallet, which is incredibly exciting. And some of the people that work with us, so you'll see there quite a few big banks from around the world have chosen us. You'll see there Best Buy, who are, Best Buy and Charles Dunstan are joint venture partners with us in an exciting new initiative in the UK that's going to let people use their mobile phones to very easily fulfill impulse purchases from TV ads and billboards and magazines, etc. I won't go into that now because we probably don't have time. And then Visa. So Visa are actually our biggest shareholder, and we're their global mobile development partner strategically, both Visa Inc. and Visa Europe. And we were very chuffed this week when Visa made a massive announcement about their mobile money strategy, and amongst the analyst slides they showed, so it's public domain, was one showing how they're using their key partners for that. So they bought CyberSource for $1 billion, wasn't it, earlier this year? And here we are at the heart of Visa's mobile money strategy for the future. And of course, mobile is huge for Visa because people are going to stop having separate plastic cards. It's all going to be moving into the phone. And when the physical card's gone, what have you got? Well, you've got with Visa the world's best financial network. Every member of that network, the people who've got the cards, the retailers who accept those payments, that's a network of standards. It's an interoperable network. It's got a huge amount of sort of risk management behind it. That's going to be pretty hard for people to shift. So from our point of view, we couldn't have a better partner. And finally, because I've got strategy in my job title, I thought I should end on a sort of a big picture note. So we reckon there's a sort of convergence going on that's driven by the fact that all this stuff is getting virtualized, and particularly around the mobile phone. So, and I'm simplifying a bit, I guess, but financial institutions are worried about getting disintermediated. If most of the purchases I do of content is through my iPad and my iPhone, and all the bank sees is a funding transaction once a month or something, all the insight about me as a person is going to Apple. Yeah, so that there's a real serious disintermediation threat here for banks out of this space. The mobile networks, somebody earlier talked about the fact that they found themselves in a position of being a bit pipe. And of course, and banks, to some extent, are concerned that they might end up being a bit pipe as well in this space. But the mobile networks, in the emerging markets, actually, they have the lead position because they've got those airtime credit agents all around the place. So they've got a great opportunity there. But they're undoubtedly concerned about what this means for them. Is it no more than just driving more data applications over their networks? For retailers and loyalty people, I guess there are two concerns that this move to mobile brings. One is, do they all get subsumed as content providers to Amazon? I mean, that's a worry for them. The second thing is, there is so much up for grabs. I used to think this coupons business was, you know, the occasional Pizza Express 2-for-1. But then I realized that so much of my purchasing pattern is determined by like where I usually go or somewhere I go past. But if my mobile phone can sort of connect me to what's the best offer available on those sort of products, what do my friends think, what do other people think, and I can just order it immediately with one click, the amount of my total spending, which is up for grabs in this space, is just huge. The stakes are enormous for that sector in this as well. And of course, for the electronic world specialists, the mobile phone potentially offers the pathway for them to move into the physical world. Because if I can tap with my phone to make a payment, does that mean I can suddenly use Facebook credits or QQ coins or whatever it might be to actually pay at point of sale? So there are just huge issues at stake for each of these sectors. There are huge battles going on within each sector, but there's this sort of general convergence on this space. And I think the Microsoft Skype situation going on is just one example of how these boundaries will break down in terms of how the landscape shapes up in future. So we're not a participant in all this stuff, but we sit beneath it, creating the connections over which these sorts of propositions hopefully will come to fruition. And that's the end of what I was going to say. Thank you very much.